This year, my interview score is 184. So the things which I did differently are twofold. One is I did a lot of, I made a lot of difference to how I filled my DAF this time, and two, how I actually prepared for the interview and how I attempted the interview when it actually happened to me. In the DAF, I think it's very important for any aspirant to take the DAF very seriously, because I think about 80% of the questions somehow will relate to how you have filled the DAF and what you have filled in the DAF. So for example, this particular time I highlighted some key aspects about myself, which I wanted them to be apprised of. Either they will ask me questions about it, or if they don't, they'll at least know that this particular person has done this good thing in his life. So they'll probably have a better impression about me beforehand or later when they're giving the marks. So for example, I'll give an example what I did this time and I did not do the last time. Last time I did not mention that I had co-authored a book on Tawaif and the traveling bioscope. So it was as part of the UGC innovation project, which I have a good idea about, but somehow I did not include that in my DEF last time. So this time I included them. I gave them keywords like I have written a book, I have written something about Tawaif, and I have written something about bioscope. All three keywords. If they ask me questions, I have to be prepared, and I was prepared. If they don't, at least they have an idea about what this guy has done, right? Next, I wrote in the DAF that I have prepared a report for the Reserve Bank of India titled Payments and Settlement System in India, in which I was asked a lot of questions by the chairperson, and then a lot of follow-up questions were asked by the members also related to economics and especially banking. So this particular report became the center of all the questions that were to follow up, about 20 to 25 of them, and I think which pertain to the relatively stronger area of my personality, which is economics and banking. The hobby that I mentioned in my DAF was reading non-fiction novels or books. See, the person has to be very selective in filling the hobby, in the sense that whatever you write has to be justified. So generally what happens in the UPSC preparation is you may have a hobby, but you are generally not able to pursue it because the preparation demands a lot from you, along with the other engagements that you have, right? So if you're not able to justify it to the board that this is my hobby and this is actually what I pursue in my daily life every now and then, not maybe at so regular, but I do try to cover it up at some points in my life, then it may become an issue, because the examiner and because the board will ultimately get hold of it that you are just writing for the sake of it. So write only whatever you think you can justify. There is no standard number, but generally 2 is a good number. Absolutely. One lady member who was in the board, she asked me about. So generally, you will expect. I was prepared with a number of titles, like this is the title I will say first, this I will say next, this I will say next. But that didn't happen, because the board is also smart enough now to understand what the candidate is prepared with and what not. So she started with giving me a name of a book. The question she asked me was actually, one social media giant has written a book recently. Can you name that person? So I could not come up with an answer. Then she gave me a hint. It's related to Facebook. Again, I could not come up with an answer. Then she actually told me the answer, that the book has been written by Sheryl Sandberg. Okay. Then she gave me another title, Emperor of All Maladies. I knew that the book has been written by a person called Siddharth Mukherjee. I knew the title also, and I knew the brief idea also. Then she asked me, have you read that book? I said, no, ma'am, I did not get the time to read the book. Then fortunately, I think that was the last chance for me also, the third time. She named another book called Freakonomics. Fortunately, she did not ask me about the author of the book, because I was not aware. But she asked me about what the book is all about, which I was aware. So I used that particular opportunity to highlight that if I have read a book, I have read it comprehensively, and that's what hobby is all about. And I explained it to her very well in whatever the best I could do. This is all the book is all about, and this is the philosophy behind whatever examples and content that the book contains. This particular time, I was not asked any situational questions as such, but I was asked a lot of opinionated questions, which are similar to situational questions as to how will you react, or what particular stand you will take in that particular policy decision or situation, right? So in that, I did in the preparation stage, I tried to be as informed as possible about issues involved regarding issues covered in my DAF, or issues helping around my field, or issues which I should be aware of generally. So first of all, knowledge is important, because the case studies, even if asked, will relate to some of the other current event or your area of specialization which you have mentioned in the DEF. So that will generally help you in answering your questions, because it will pertain to the same, more or less, right? Two, generally do not, I don't think it's a very good idea to have a frame of mind beforehand before you start to answer the questions, because once the board gets the hang of it, that you already have a preconceived notion about a particular situation that you may be given, then it may become tricky for you to handle the further questions or the follow-up questions that may be asked to you on that particular case study. So generally the case studies are not very difficult actually. If you have a decent presence of mind, you are able to handle them well. And if you have, even if you are not, you can very well go and tell them, sorry sir, I think I need to inform myself much better, and then I'll probably be able in a better position to answer this question. Per se, these three words I did not use. I do not know, but I used other ways of saying no in my interview. For example, pardon me, I'm not aware of this. Pardon me, I've not been sincere enough to revise this particular question or topic or subject. And those are the kind of ways I used and I had to use, and I think everybody has to use to say no in a particular in my particular interview. So the factors I think that worked for me in the interview process is two. One is how I filled my DAF and how I tried to convey whatever I had to convey about my personality and myself to the board in one way or the other. So that was one thing which worked for me, I think. And two is how I dealt with the entire interview process after the results for the mains came and the day when I had to actually give the interview. So throughout the time duration in between, which I had along with the job that I was working on, I generally educated myself much better as compared to the last time. I started with picking up my DAF and jotting down all the keywords that are there in my DAF, including the state, city, education, school, hobbies, interest, academic qualifications, everything and anything. Try to interlink them with each other, and then form an opinion about particular topics that may be asked. So it's generally a very good idea to educate yourself and be aware about your belongings. For example, your city, your state, your and whatever I've just generally mentioned. So that also worked for me, I think, because I was much more prepared. So if the questions are asked on those particular topics, you're generally it's a good sign. If not, it generally gives you much better confidence that even if the question is asked, it doesn't matter because I'm prepared. So the confidence is very, very important in that sense. And the last thing which worked for me was on that particular day of the interview, I was much more relaxed comparatively, but I think that has to do a lot with how I prepared myself, and then I ate a chocolate, which generally helps. And then when I entered the interview hall, the first 2 minutes are very, very crucial. And the basic things that you have to do are very, very crucial. For example, there are two basic things that you have to do when you enter the board, enter the room of the board. One, you have to say good morning or good afternoon to them very nicely, very well, very politely. And two, you have to sit properly on the chair. That's all. So if basically you are able to do these two basic things very, very well, and that gives you a lot of confidence that ये basic चीजें तो मैंने ठीक कर ली हैं. Now it's the time for knowledge, and I am aware. I have read well. So, but if you do not do these two basic things properly, then it gets hung in your head कि यार basic चीजें तो गलत कर दी, अब मैं अगर जवाब दे भी दूंगा तो it will not have a major impact. You can very politely, if you're not able to comprehend a particular question, you can very politely ask the board member to repeat the question by apologizing beforehand. But you should generally not do it a lot because it sounds offensive that you're not attentive while you're giving the interview. So try to be attentive, try to understand the question in the first hand. But if you're not, then it's not a very bad idea to ask him. See, the idea of the interview is not to be being pro-government or anti-government. The idea is to have an opinion about different topics that are asked to you. It may as well happen at times that the general opinion about a particular topic is anti-government, and it may that you also may think in your heart that this is particular thing wrong. So as long as you can justify that particular anti-government stand, it's not bad. But overall, you should try to have a balanced opinion about things. You should not try to be you should not try to be very opinionated and strongly opinionated about a lot of things. First of all, read well, educate yourself well, have knowledge, be aware about your subjects, your topics, your belongings. That will give you a lot of confidence and definitely will help you get over the anxiety. 2, eat chocolate. 3, when you're sitting outside the exam hall, just take deep breaths because that helps a lot. And 4th, do the basic things well. So I'm just jotting down the basic things which generally people tend to take for granted, but these are very, very important. These will actually help you answer well and take the interview well and in the right direction in the next 20-25 minutes in the interview. See, I think in the interview, it's just a normal talk which which a normal person has with another. So, for example, I'm talking to a particular board member. I have to look at them. That's all. But eye contact is important with that particular person. You should not try to hide yourself or show, because if you're not looking straight into the eyes of the interviewer, then it shows lack of confidence and lack of knowledge, which is not a good thing to happen. So generally, but I don't think you are expected to look at everybody while you are answering the questions. I think it's bad actually, because you're generally showing the back of your head while answering to that particular question, which is not